online payment channels, such as GCash, by also following 3 simple steps. Step 1. Download the GCash app on your mobile phone and register. Step 2. Go to the Pay Bill section and click Government. Step 3. Choose BIR, then complete all the necessary information. You will then receive a text message confirming your payment. With these easy steps, you can still pay your taxes while staying at home. For other payment options and additional information on the Pay Taxes at Home process, visit www.pwc.com/ph/paytaxesathome. How do I pay my taxes while staying at home? If you have any Visa or MasterCard credit card or BankNet ATM or debit card, you can pay via online banking with just 3 simple steps. Step 1. Go to the website of Development Bank of the Philippines through dbppaytax.com. Step 2. Complete all the necessary information. Step 3. Select mode of payment and provide your card details, then click Submit. You will receive an email and text message to confirm your payment. It's that easy. But what if I don't have a credit card? You can use other online payment channels, such as GCash, by also following 3 simple steps. Step 1. Download the GCash app on your mobile phone and register. Step 2. Go to the Pay Bill section and click Government. Step 3. Choose BIR, then complete all the necessary information. You will then receive a text message confirming your payment. With 3 easy steps, you can still pay your taxes while staying at home. For other payment options and additional information on the Pay Taxes at Home process, visit www.pwc.com/ph/paytaxesathome.
Dear God, today I see before me another wonder of your creation. When a double rainbow appeared over Lords in the south of France, your surprises amaze me each time and remind me of your thoughtfulness and love. Ever since you have been faithful with your promises, from the very first rainbow, which appeared after the great flood, you made a promise to Noah that never again shall all creatures be destroyed by the waters of the flood. There shall not be another flood to devastate the earth. You said, I set my bow in the clouds to serve as a sign of the covenant between me and the earth. When I bring clouds over the earth, and the bow appears in the clouds, I will remember my covenant between me and every living creature, every mortal being. You called bow, we called rainbow. And now, we feel like we're experiencing the great flood again, which seems to destroy the earth. Calamities hitting our land, lives threatened by illness, and thousands of people dying. All these crises that the world is in, dark clouds seem to cover the sky. But thank you for showing us the rainbow. It reminds us of your infinite mercy and faithfulness to your promise of hope. When you said that flood shall never again destroy the earth, so long as the rainbow appears, we believe that you will also not end the world in fire, earthquake, or sickness. We remember both our excesses and shortcomings and are truly sorry for them. Give us time to be deserving of your mercy and this covenant of love. Thank you, our dear Lord, for the hope. Thank you for showing us once more your bow. Thank you for keeping our rainbow.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our webinar Credit Crunch. How can MSMEs access financing from government financial institutions? I am Alvin Dave Pusing, PwC Consulting Director, and it is my pleasure to be your host and moderator for this morning. With the success of our first run in June, we are bringing you again this webinar for our panelists and guest speakers to share with you some funding options available for MSMEs and how can these options be availed. On behalf of PwC Philippines, the Cebu Chamber of Commerce and Industry, and our sponsor Performance 360, we're delighted and honored to have you today. Before we start today's session, here are some reminders for all participants for a better webinar and learning experience. Please be informed that the webinar session you are attending may be recorded by PwC Philippines for future reference. By attending the webinar, you hereby give your consent to the photography, audio recording, and video recording, and its or their release, publication, exhibition, or reproduction by PwC Philippines with their partners, staff, and alumni via newsletters, email communication, website offerings, and or other forms of communication. For participants attending this webinar via Zoom, audio in Zoom requires either a microphone through your computer or phone device. Note that the host has control over the participant's audio during the meeting, which means that they can mute and unmute you anytime. To unmute yourself, click the unmute button in the bottom left corner of the window. And to mute yourself, click the mute button. A red slash over the microphone will appear. To start or stop the video, click the Start Video in the menu bar at the bottom of the window to begin the video stream. Click the Stop Video button to stop sharing the video stream. You can also send a chat message to all participants in the meeting. Click the chat button in the menu bar at the bottom of the window to activate the chat panel at the right-hand side of the window, just below the participants panel. This is important because if you have questions for our panelists, please use the chat panel and our webinar team will consolidate them for the Q&A portion later. For those who were not able to join us today via Zoom, you may still participate via Facebook live stream. Send in your questions through the comment box and our webinar team will consolidate them for the Q&A portion later. So you can access this webinar as it is streamed live through our PwC Philippines Facebook page, as you see on the screen, and the Cebu Chamber of Commerce and Industry Facebook page. At this point, I would like to welcome our viewers via the Facebook live stream, both at the PwC Philippines Facebook page and the Cebu Chamber of Commerce and Industry Facebook page. Good morning, and we look forward to your questions and feedback as we go along. And lastly, some webinar reminders to make our session fruitful and seamless. Listen and participate and respond to questions and ask to clarify and be present in the session. Let's be all conscious of our technology. So the mute button, the volumes, and the platforms. Let's use our earphones for a better audio experience. Do not do other unrelated things so that we need to mute our chat and notify them if you are in the webinar. And lastly, close other unnecessary applications to manage the internet speed. To formally welcome us today in our webinar, I would like to introduce the Cebu Chamber of Commerce and Industry Trustee, and PwC Philippines Vismin Business Lead Partner, Mr. Aldi Garcia.
Thank you, Alvin. Good morning, everyone. To our speakers, thank you for sharing your time with us this morning. To the officers and the members of Cebu Chamber of Commerce and Industry who are with us this morning. This webinar is a good follow-through on what we have discussed during our most recent virtual GMM. And to the Cebu business community, today our government is expected to announce another set of quarantine classifications. And our hope and prayer, of course, is that Cebu will be one step closer to being back at GCQ. And as we prepare for the reopening of the economy, this morning we will talk about a very crucial component of our ability to bounce back as a business, and that is financing. For our agenda for today, we will present to you some data that we have gathered as it relates to the MSME sector. We will then hear from our speakers about the funding programs available from the different government financial institutions. And then we will proceed to demonstrate a PwC developed MSME financing navigator. And then, of course, our Q&A session. As I also represent this morning the Board of Trustees and Officers of Cebu Chamber, when the first community quarantine was announced in March, we did a quick survey to ask our members their priority areas as they transition to the new normal. 87% of our members identified financing options as a top priority. A large number of our members also pointed out that they worry about their ability to survive without interventions and meaningful government stimulus program. This morning, we hope to answer these questions. What are the funding options that are available for MSMEs? And most importantly, how can we gain access to these funding options so that we can apply for them and we can use them as we bounce back and prepare for the new normal? I encourage, therefore, everyone to ask questions and get the answers directly from the source. And I hope today will be a fruitful session for everyone. Thank you, and good morning once again to our participants. Back to you, Alvin.
Thank you, Aldi. And we now have Ms. Jaja Dorado to formally introduce our speaker and understanding the MSME sector. Jaja.
Thank you, Alvin, and thank you, Sir Aldi, for that very warm welcome and opening remarks. Good morning, guest speakers, and to all our participants. I hope that you are all safe and healthy. As right now, across the globe, everyone is experiencing a high level of uncertainty faced with questions on how to deal with the new normal and the aftermath of COVID-19. The varying degrees of restrictions implemented and the rapidly evolving situation have posed significant challenges to the business environment. And there are sectors who are more affected and more vulnerable than others. And this is true for micro, small, and medium enterprises in the Philippines. Sometime in April to May, PwC conducted COVID-19 business impact survey in order to understand how businesses are coping with the current crisis and with the implementation of the community quarantine in major areas in the country. The survey covers both MSMEs and large companies, and we have 330 respondents, of which 58% are MSMEs. The survey shows that 44% of MSMEs are in need of working capital management, while with the implementation of the community quarantine, many of the establishments were closed And even if the government temporarily suspended rental and loan payments, expenses and payables are still piling up, which put pressure on the working capital and cash position of MSMEs. The survey result also reveals that about 30% of large businesses considered working capital management as a concern. A large percentage of MSMEs, about 39% of our respondents, are seeing financing or capital as one of their pressing needs. This is primarily to fund working capital requirements, and secondary would be for capital expenditures. Based on the survey conducted by DEDA, the Business Sector Survey, many MSMEs seek financing from government institutions and from family and friends. Large companies are also in need of financing. And other pressing concerns are manpower deployment, given the restrictions in movement and public transportation. There is also a concern to review business plan and strategies because of the sudden change in the business model of companies and emergence of the new.
Hello, good morning, everyone. Thank you for your patience. We're just solving some technical challenges. Jaja, are you back?
Yes, Alvin. I'm sorry about that. Can you see me now? Alvin, is it okay now?
Yes,
I'm
we can
sorry
hear you,
about that.
Jaja.
Yeah, we have
Yes, you can.
Yeah, we had technical problems here in the connection. So as I've said earlier, because of the imposition of as the as the imposed restrictions are starting to ease up, businesses are slowly resuming operations, and particularly here in Metro Manila and probably in Cebu, the government will issue another guidelines as to opening up of the business activities. But without the vaccine, activities are still limited, and small businesses are anticipating liquidity issue to surface. It is shown in our COVID-19 business impact survey that a larger percentage of quarantine compared to large companies. And to conserve cash and sustain the business, 48% of MSMEs consistent with the business sector survey of NEDA, which showed that most MSMEs delay payments on taxes and debt, as well as the suppliers. Others may resort to reducing manpower and compensation, according to Development Bank of the Philippines survey result. Regular and part-time employees of MSMEs were directly impacted by granting leaves, reducing work hours, pay cuts, and even for a restructuring or refinancing. And some
Hi everyone. Good morning. I was told that the host team are having some technical difficulties with respect to their connection, and they are actually in the office, but apparently the whole building now is experiencing intermittent connection. So hopefully they are able to fix the connection, and we will be able to restart. But this survey is very good. Is a very good indicator of impact of the pandemic, and in terms of what MSME should be most concerned about uh, post ECQ. Are we back on, Jaja, Alvin?
Hi, Aldi. We're still resolving, although we're getting connection from time to time. Probably you can um, elaborate at least what you were saying a while ago.
Okay, thank you, Alvin. So this survey that we did at the beginning of the lockdown um, highlights what are in the minds of top of minds for CEOs, especially for MSMEs. They are concerned about, of course, the well-being of the owners and the employees, and more importantly, the survival of their business. Because while everybody talks about um, going back to the normal as we know it will be significantly changed, especially for businesses, and most especially for MSMEs. MSMEs are characterized by the entrepreneurial spirit of the founders. And if there's one thing we know about this very entrepreneurial mindset of the founders is that they will fight tooth and nail for everything that they were able to build over the years. And it's good to have this survey for them to know that they are not the only ones who are losing sleep at night with respect to their business and how they are going to survive. This also aligns some of the priority areas in terms of which steps they need to take, which teams they need to form for them to be able to bounce back stronger and survive the pandemic. When you talk about teams that are supposed to be being formed now, on top of my head and based on our experience dealing with MSMEs, there should be at least three teams that should be working in your business. One is, of course, your frontliner teams. They are your survival teams. You talk about the safety and well-being of your founders. You talk about the well-being and the assistance being given to your employees. And the second team is to look at repurpose team. Repurpose meaning you go back and take stock of what assets you have left, what assets do you have in the business, and make sure that you realign them, repurpose them, and be positioned to take advantage once the economy is reopened. And then the other team that you need to be forming as you get back to normal is to reimagine your business model, to reimagine your business purpose, and this is your reimagined team. Maybe the old ways of doing business is not the right way to move forward. Maybe the structure and the business model that you have adopted in the past is no longer the more um, beneficial way of moving your business forward. So this reimagined team should talk about what other areas should you be looking at to invest in, what other opportunities should you be taking advantage of as you prepare for the reopening of the economy. These are some of the insights that we were able to gather from the survey that we have conducted at the beginning of the pandemic. So hopefully our hosts are back now and we can proceed with the exciting topic that we have lined up for today. Alvin and Jaja.
Yes, thank you, Sir Aldi. Since we're having technical problems in terms of internet connection, we will just turn off our video. So we'll have more bandwidth in terms of the connection. So we can now continue with our topics. So we can now proceed to the different government implemented stimulus program, which would include credit guarantee and loan programs to the different government agencies and financial institutions, among others. And we have invited guest speakers to provide more information and clarity on these programs and other initiatives of MSMEs of the institutions that they are representing. So our first guest speaker is the Senior Vice President and Head of the Corporate Business Group of Philippine Guarantee Corporation and has been with the institution for 12 years. He worked with Land Bank of the Philippines for 17 years and co-authored a textbook in economics. He has a bachelor degree in agribusiness from University of the Philippines, Los Baños. He is Mr. Celso R. Gutierrez. We also have a guest speaker from Land Bank of the Philippines, Mr. Eulalio G. Lagapa Jr. He is the Vice President and Head of Cebu North Lending Center of Land Bank. And our last speaker is Attorney Marisa P. Anino from the Development Bank of the Philippines. She is a Senior Assistant Vice President and concurrent head of the Visayas Lending Group and Cebu South Lending Center of DBP. Our guest speaker will be presenting in the next 30 to 45 minutes. And if you have questions, type them in the chat panel and we will try to cover all your questions for our speakers in the Q&A session later. And for those watching us through FB live streaming, please type your questions in the comment box and we will include that later. I am now turning you over to our first speaker, Mr. Celso Gutierrez from Phil Guarantee. Turn over to you, Sir Celso.
Okay. Hello. Yeah. Can I be heard, Janice? Hello.
Yes, Mr. Celso, we can hear you.
Yeah. Good morning.
Yes, sir.
Yes, ma'am. I'll just prepare my presentation. Why is this? Okay. Yeah, I'm just preparing my presentation. Oh, screen sharing. Janice, it seems like I cannot get my presentation by the screen share. Ah, there.
So while Mr. Celso is preparing the presentation, I'd like to remind everyone to please don't be shy and type your questions in the chat box. And for our Facebook viewers, please post them on the comment section. And now we can see Mr. Celso's presentation. Mr. Celso?
Yeah. Let me just play. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, co-speakers, Janice, Alvin. I'm presenting today Phil Guarantee. The presentation outline will be our brief profile of Phil Guarantee and the initiatives we have taken and the different programs that we offer to MSMEs. Well, formerly known as PhilExim, but with the Executive Order 58 issued last 2018, there was a merger of all the government guarantee corporations and programs into PhilExim, with PhilExim the surviving entity. and we were renamed Philippine Guarantee Corporation. So we're not really a new corporation. We're an old corporation since 1977. We've completed our consolidation last February with the hiring of people. And we are a government-owned and controlled corporation attached to the Department of Finance and supervised by the central bank. So this is to show the four programs and corporations that were incorporated to fill guarantee. The Agriculture Guarantee Fund was the first to be incorporated. The Home Guarantee Corporation, the Industrial Guarantee and Loan Fund managed by DBP then was transferred to fill guarantee, and the guarantee function of Small Business Corporation. Taken out of our charter is a lending program. So we're now purely a guarantee corporation. So with Executive Order 58, there was a consolidation of all the functions. So there is now only one credit guarantee institution in the country, and that's Philippine Guarantee Corporation. Our authorized capital was increased from 10 billion pesos to 50 billion pesos. And as of 2019, we have total assets of 56 billion, an equity of 23.2 billion. We have allowed plantilla of 328, but we now only have 271 personnel. We have a total guarantee capacity of based on 22.6 billion, about 400 billion pesos with a capital adequacy ratio of 7%. As of today, we only have about 207 billion of the total 400 billion capacity. What can we guarantee? We guarantee practically almost all industries because of the merger of the function of SB Corp. We now can cater to micro industries and trading. So previously, we only handle industries under the Board of Investment Priority Program and infrastructure. But now with the merger, we can go into those businesses, including housing, agriculture, tourism, well, healthcare, and energy. Who could borrow from the banks we guarantee? Well, it's practically any enterprise. For the housing, you can have the socialized, the low cost, medium cost, and open housing. And of course, the AGFP, which caters to small farmers and fisher folk. But now with our stronger capital, we can also handle commercial size agriculture projects. Because we only guarantee and we do not provide funds, eligible lenders are private universal banks, commercial banks, thrift and development banks, rural banks, and for agricultural guarantee fund pool, AGFP, farmers co-ops and NGOs are accepted as guaranteed lenders. The initiatives we have made for agriculture and housing. For agriculture, we have actually granted 60-day extension to all AGFP grant, those with AGFP lines expiring between March 16 and April 30. We granted 30-day extension period to claims with maturities between March 16 and April 15, 2020. we granted 60-day extension period to all AFP grantee lines expiring between May 1 to June 30, 2020. We relaxed our guarantee terms in the availment of the GFP, higher guarantee lines for small farmers, effective April 15 and until July 15. We reduce also the guarantee rate to 0.5% and increase the coverage of the loan amount to 90%. For low-cost affordable housing, we waive all housing program-related penalties from March 16 to May 31. We lifted a 30-day period to file housing claims before March 16 to May 31. We had a 2-month moratorium on monthly amortization payments for housing, long and short-term rentals, and those covered under joint venture agreements, those that have rentals with HGC. And we had a moratorium for the payment of loan amortization and lease rentals for restructured loans and lessees of acquired properties effective March 16 to May 31. No additional interest and penalty were collected during the same period. Now for the micro, small, and medium enterprises, we have recently formulated and launched MSME Credit Guarantee Program. We have 2 programs in place that are running simultaneously. The first is the SME Credit Guarantee Facility, and this is to support the expansion of the SME portfolio of accredited banks. And we have a pro-rata sharing scheme with them. For working capital loans, we guarantee 50%. For secured term loans, we guarantee from 50 to 80% of the principal. We do not guarantee the interest, we only guarantee the principal. Who could borrow any business enterprise, whether sole proprietorship, partnership, or corporation. We have preferred industries, but practically we have accepted most industries, most business enterprises. The loan amount is from 500 to 50 million per borrower, but on a case-to-case basis, we could entertain loans that are over 50 million. Well, basically, any business-related expenses is eligible as a loan purpose. We can grant, we can cover the guarantee, we can guarantee the loans from 1 to 5 years or even up to 7 years on a case-to-case basis. As to collateral, we do not require separate collateral for field guarantee, only what the bank has required. In response to the COVID-19 pandemic, we have launched a special program, and we call it the MSME Credit Guarantee Program. The program aims to increase availability of credit from the banking sector, and in our case, we hope the private sector would continue lending. The private banking sector would continue lending to MSMEs. The guarantee coverage of this program is 50% of the principal amount of the loan. The guarantee fee is 1% per annum. We have reduced this from 1.25, and this will run until December 2020. At our evaluation, we may extend this beyond December 2020. Again, any enterprise that has a relationship with the private banks are eligible borrowers. They must be in operation for at least 1 year prior to March 16, and they have been affected by COVID-19. We're quite liberal in this. Almost all businesses are affected by COVID-19. and it must not be classified prior to the onset of COVID-19. We were setting the date as prior to March 16, 2020. The account must not be classified. Again, for the loan amount, we allow maximum of 50 million per borrower, but again, on a case-to-case basis, we could accept loans over 50 million. Basically, the eligible purpose is simply for working capital. So shown below are the contact persons who you can email depending on the area where the query came from. So just to reiterate, we are actually guaranteeing the private banks to continue lending to MSME, and pretty soon we hope to make a major assistance because we have widened the availability of guaranteed credit to the private sector so that you don't have to line up with government banks only. So with this, thank you, and we hope to continue assisting the MSMEs.
Thank you, Sir
Yeah.
Celso, for
Yes,
sharing field
Navjin.
guarantee initiatives for MSMEs. And definitely, we will get in touch with you if we have a need for credit guarantee in the future. And of course, for our MSMEs as well, and for those businesses in the Visayas. Our next speaker is from Land Bank. Let's give our undivided attention to Sir Boy. Take it away, Sir Boy.
Good morning, everyone. I would like to share my screen. Is my audio clear? Um, this
Yes,
is
sir, it's
Mr.
clear.
Thank you. Hi, again, good morning. And we would like to thank the Cebu Chamber of Commerce and Industry for inviting us to share Land Bank SME credit facility. And I would like to thank also the participants for joining us in this webinar. So as a rationale, Land Bank support the entrepreneurs or the MSMEs through its lending program with its presence in all the 81 provinces nationwide. So Land Bank Lending Center is the unit that caters the lending transactions for those entrepreneurs who wants to borrow. So entrepreneurs are given the support needed in order to start or expand their business wherever they are in the country. So here is the salient features of the SME credit facility of Land Bank. Who are the eligible borrowers? They are the single proprietorship and also partnership with 100% Filipino owned, and a corporation, and it should be at least 60% Filipino owned. Of course, we know that qualifying under the MSME program or in MSME category are those with asset size of up to 100 million. For the eligible projects, of course, Land Bank is more concerned with agri-related projects. So we prioritized agri-businesses. However, we also cater projects that are related to manufacturing, also trading, and services. For the loan features, for the purpose, we cater agricultural production loans, and then working capital also for the businesses of the MSMEs, and then permanent working capital for those want to have capex, and then fixed asset investment. So although land acquisition is not qualified under the loan purpose. As to loanable amount in the project cost sharing, land bank can finance up to 80% of the total project cost. So the borrower need to put up at least 20% equity. But this equity should either be in cash or in kind, or meaning those that are involved in the business operation. For the loan facility, uh, Land Bank has the short-term loan line. Usually, this is via one-year credit line, and it can be availed usually via 6 months or 180 days promissory note. And then we also have facility for the letters of credit, trust receipts, export packing credit line, or export bills purchase line for those who are doing export activities. And then we also have a standby letter of credit. And for term loan facilities, usually this is for the acquisition of equipment. For the interest rate, Land Bank has for the internal funds, we use the prevailing market rate, and depending on the term of the loan, and then the credit rating of the borrower. As of now, we are using the BVAL, or the Bloomberg valuation, and then there is a certain spread based from the BVAL, and it would depend on the credit rating of the borrower. There are also special financing available with Land Bank, and we are using whatever applicable rate for that special financing. And then for the repayment terms, for the short term, as I mentioned earlier, it's via 180-day, or in some cases up to 360-day promissory note. Usually for short-term loan line, a borrower may pay the interest upon expiry of the promissory note, but we usually require cleanup on the principal portion. For the term loan, it is based on the cash flow with monthly or quarterly repayments on principal and interest. And loan tenor, this is usually based on the project to be undertaken and the cash flow of the borrower, but we can give up to maximum of 10 years for using internal funds of Land Bank, or 15 years for the special financing. For the acceptable collaterals, real estate mortgage is one of the acceptable collaterals. So this should be ideally the titled property, and it should be registered with Register of Deeds. And then chattel mortgage on machinery and equipment. Usually, Land Bank requires mortgage of those project financed. And then we also accept deed of assignment of inventories and receivable. And as other credit enhancers, JSS of principal stockholders or officers is required, or a guarantee from any institution. So I included in my slide the risk assets acceptance criteria of Land Bank, because this will guide MSMEs for them to successfully avail the financing program of Land Bank. So number one is the character. So when we say character, Land Bank should ensure that the borrower has no adverse findings, or the principal of the, in the case of corporation, has no adverse findings on other financial institutions. I would like to emphasize that some of our applicants failed on this aspect because they tend to ignore, or they did not monitor their credit card handling. So when we conduct credit investigation, there would appear unpaid balances of the credit cards, or some have canceled credit cards, and it would affect the character of the borrower. On the capacity side, uh, land bank would evaluate that the project should have or the borrower and the project would have a source of repayment that is well defined. And then I would put an emphasis also on this that based on standard evaluation procedure of land bank, we require a track record of at least 3-year profitable operation. So of course, it is standard for the bank that the project should be in place and there should be a history of profitable operation. And one of the bases in evaluating this is the requirement for the submission of uh, BIR filed financial statement for the last 3 years of the business operation. However, a land bank in a case-to-case basis may finance also startup project. However, we would evaluate that the applicant or the borrower has familiarity on that kind of project to be undertaken. And then another aspect on the capacity is the debt service cover. And based on financials, it should be at least one time. So meaning the project or the business can pay the amount that they would borrow. For the condition, land bank would evaluate the favorable outlook of the industry. Now, as of now, with this pandemic, we can say that the tourism industry is challenged and not in its favorable outlook. So that's one of the aspects that the bank would consider. And then for the capital, uh, it should be a requirement that the borrower has an equity portion. So based on the financial statement, there should be a debt equity ratio of 80-20, meaning on the total assets, 80% will be on the borrowing side and the 20% is on the equity. Again, part of the risk asset acceptance criteria is the collateral. So I mentioned earlier the REM, the chattel mortgage, or hold out on deposit. But as of now, banks are not anymore very strict in terms of collateral cover. There are instances that we can grant financing even if the collateral is not on a 1-to-1 ratio. So, however, there are credit enhancers to be provided, such as assignment of receivables. In some instances, we require issuance of post-dated checks and execution of joint and several signatures or comprehensive surety agreements. I would like to mention some of the specialized lending facility for land bank for your appreciation for the micro and small enterprises. Number one is the poultry lending program. So land bank is active now in financing for those contract growers with integrators. Land bank can finance the construction of the poultry building and some of the working capital. Also, if there are other related value chain in this poultry lending program, say on the breeder side or on the processing side, on the dressing plant, and up to the trading of poultry products, land bank can support those kinds of businesses. Next is the Builders Program. This is a program for contractors. Usually, contractors with projects with government agencies such as DPWH, LGU, or the DepEd, they can assign their contracts to us, and Land Bank can grant financing, say up to 70 or 80% of their contracts submitted. And then in support also of the tourism, although the industry now is not quite robust, but Land Bank has a farm tourism financing program. So for those MSMEs who want to develop their farms into a tourism destination, Land Bank can support for that. And then also franchising lending program for those MSMEs that would like to engage in businesses on this franchising scheme. So Land Bank can also support. And in support also for the environment, Land Bank has these two programs, the Go Green Inclusive Financing for SMEs and LGUs. This is for projects that would encourage to support or for the environment protection. Some applicants have projects such as solar power and refleeting of their units and modernization of some of their equipment. And then for the renewable energy, solar, wind, or some other renewable energy, Land Bank will also finance the program. And then I would like to mention also that Land Bank has opened facility for those wanted to acquire either lot acquisition, house and lot acquisition, or construction of residential houses. Land Bank has program for housing, and we call it home or the housing opportunities made easy. And then for the returning OFWs, Land Bank still has a program for the OFW reintegration, although we are scrutinizing or evaluating as to the specific projects that the OFW will undertake. For the pre-processing requirements for the single proprietorship, number one is the duly filled out Land Bank application form. It can be downloaded in the website of Land Bank, www.landbank.com, or you can get it from the lending center office. And then the biodata of borrowers, photocopy of certificate of registration with DTI, mayor's permit, the BIR filed financial statement for the last 3 years, latest interim financial statement, the projected income statement, balance sheet and cash flow, and the basic assumptions, and a brief history of the business. For the partnership or a corporation, there need also to fill out Land Bank loan application. And then we require the photocopy of the certificate of registration with SEC, certified true copy of articles of incorporation, board resolution authorizing the management to obtain a loan from Land Bank, notarized list of officers, partners, board of directors, biodata of borrowers or their proprietors and partners. We also require sworn statement or asset of assets and liabilities for those issuing JSS or CSA. And then again, the BIR file financial statement, the interim financial statement, the financial projections, and the brief history of the business. At this point, I would like to share some of the few slides that Land Bank has a program, especially for this time of pandemic. We call it iRescue, or the Interim Rehabilitation Support to Caution Unfavorably Affected Enterprises by COVID-19. So under this program, Land Bank supports SMEs, including the cooperatives and microfinance institutions, through the provision of additional funds and loan restructuring under more flexible terms and conditions through the following types of credit assistance. Number one is the rehab of rehabilitation credit programs for SMEs. and then another program for loans restructuring for the existing borrowers of land bank. So the features of this program, credit program for SMEs, the eligible projects or the loan purpose is the emergency fund for working capital. But we would like to emphasize that we are quite selective on this, on the evaluation, because we know that those some of the businesses are their cash flows are really affected, and it's part of our evaluation to assess the cash flow and the potential recovery of the project or of the business with this pandemic situation. So for the credit facility is this is a term loan, and then for the loanable amount is up to 85% of the actual need, and for the tenor, actually this is only 5 years is the maximum, but we will be evaluating based on the cash flow. It can be lower or lesser period. So for the tenor also, we can allow a maximum of 2 years grace period, depending on the cash flow of the project. For the interest rate, Land Bank has uh, provided a fixed for 3 year of 5% per annum, and subject to annual repricing after the 3 years. So the basis is the 1 year BVAL for the repricing plus a spread depending on the credit rating. Of course, there should it's a standard penalty of 24% per annum, and then the mode of payment is either monthly, quarterly, semi-annual, or annual. And other fees, we will collect standard fees for this. And then the mode of release, it's a lump sum or a staggered release depending on the requirement of the project. And then for the collateral, any acceptable collateral, and we are requiring also the issuance of post-dated checks to cover maturing amortizations. For the requirements of this under the iRescue, usually this is more or less the same with the regular financing. Loan application form, registration papers, and then permits and licenses. Of course, we also ask the financial statement, client information, and tax identification number. This slide is for our existing borrowers of Land Bank. So if their businesses are really affected with this pandemic, we can grant them rehabilitation through loan restructuring. So for the tenor, depending on the cash flow and the potentials of the business, it can be up to maximum of 10 years with maximum also of 3 years grace period on the principal and 1 year grace period on interest. And then same with the regular or the iRescue SME loan, it's 5% per annum fixed for 3 years. And then the mode of payment is monthly, quarterly, or semi-annual and annual. Penalties for this is waived. So for those MSMEs in Cebu who are interested to avail of the Land Bank SME facility, actually we have 2 lending centers here in the province of Cebu. I am handling the Cebu North Lending Center, and we are based at the 6th floor of the Consolacion Government Center in Consolacion, Cebu. We are catering areas starting from Mandaue City, Lapu-Lapu, and then going north up to Tabuelan. And then for the Cebu South Lending Center, they are based in the second floor of Land Bank Building in Osmeña Boulevard, and they are catering businesses or MSMEs from the Cebu City going south and up to the municipality of Tuburan. So here in the screens are the contact numbers and the email addresses of the two lending centers where you can send your queries or your applications. With that, I would like to thank you for listening to my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you for those wonderful programs for MSME Sir Boy, as well as for sharing with us the different requirements. Certainly, this information will be helpful to this sector. Our last speaker from DBP is no other than Attorney Marisa Anino.
Good
Over to you.
morning, Ms. Janice.
Good
Can you hear
morning.
me? Can you hear
Yes,
me?
yes, I can hear you and I can see you.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. It is our pleasure at DBP to be part of this webinar hosted by the Cebu Chamber of Commerce and Industry and PwC. In this time of pandemic, it is good for us to come together to offer our strategies and support measures for micro, small, and medium enterprise. As you all know, it is part of the mandate of the Development Bank of the Philippines to look after the well-being of MSMEs. I would like to start my presentation with this quote: "We rise by lifting others." This means that real growth and fulfillment can only be felt if we are able to help others who are in need. In good times, MSMEs have been credited as the backbone of the country's economy. Statistics from the Department of Trade and Industry shows that MSMEs account for 99.5% of the total number of establishments, employing 62.8% of the total labor workforce in the Philippines and contributing at least 35.7% of the total value added to the economy. In bad times, such as this crisis, we certainly have to give the MSMEs more credit than they deserve by acknowledging and acting on the urgency of providing them with support interventions and safety nets. Thus, DBP continues to offer various development lending programs directed at assisting our enterprising fellow men. I would like to share with you the results of the survey on the top 3 needs of MSMEs and large enterprises. This was done by NEDA and the Department of Finance. There were 44,097 respondents in that survey conducted last April 5 to 8, 2020 during the pandemic. The survey revealed that the top 3 needs of MSMEs and large corporations are: number 1, payment deferment, which can be provided by government, banks, and utilities. Number 2, tax discounts or tax credits. Number 3, low interest loans from government and banks. Our DBP response program addresses 2 of these top 3 MSME needs. DBP's response program is an acronym for Rehabilitation Support Program on Severe Events. It was originally crafted even before we were confronted with this pandemic, with the following objectives: to support the national government in rebuilding and expediting recovery process of calamity-stricken areas, and to extend credit assistance for rehabilitation. This is the same program that DBP has used when we helped during the Yolanda rehabilitation. We have just made some enhancement to address certain needs applicable to this pandemic. The DBP response supports both public and private institutions regardless of size. So this is also available for local government units. For purposes of our discussion today, my presentation focuses on our loan package relevant to MSMEs. The program finances all eligible projects, except of course those listed in the DBP's negative list, such as illegal activities. In addition, the program requires very minimal equity contribution from the borrower as it allows financing up to 95% of the actual project need. So for example, if you're a restaurant and you're going to build a bigger restaurant to comply with social distancing protocols, if your total project cost is 10 million, we will give you 9.5. Your equity will only be 500,000. Ordinarily, under our regular program, we require 30% equity. So this is already a big relief. Although for MSMEs, our regular program, we can lessen our equity requirement up to 10%. But nevertheless, this special program is still better because the equity requirement here is only 5%. Under this program, we can extend you up to 10 years for capital expenditure. So inclusive of 3 years grace period, meaning you just have to pay us interest for the first 3 years and start paying us principal on the 4th year. That is for capital expenditure. But we also provide you under this special program your working capital requirements, but we do not give it as a short-term loan. We will provide this to you through a long-term loan, which the term of the working capital, we call this permanent working capital, is 5 years, inclusive of 1 year grace period. So even if this is working capital, we still give you a 1 year grace period on principal. So you start paying us the principal on the 2nd year. Interest rate is fixed for 5 years. And by the way, because this is a special program, our interest rate here is 1% lower than the regular rate. So this really is better compared to our regular programs. In addition, fees and other charges are waived. So we do not, because this is a program meant to help businesses affected by the calamity or the pandemic, we do not collect processing fees here to further lighten the debt burden on MSME borrowers. For our existing borrowers, we extended them loan deferments up to 6 months. So our existing borrowers need not worry for the payment of principal and interest up to until 2021. The 6 months is even on top of the BSP mandatory grace period, which ended June 1. So our existing borrowers will really begin to pay us in 2021. Now, if our existing borrowers cannot pay us still until the end of the deferment period, the bank is still willing to restructure if they have not fully recovered yet. While we hope this would be sufficient to address the liquidity issues brought about by the pandemic, should additional assistance be required, we can further restructure, as I've mentioned, or provide additional loans to our existing borrowers and our new borrowers to help reconfigure the business to adapt to the new normal. Now, what are the pre-qualification criteria under the DBP response? The first criterion is declaration of state of calamity. So most of us, if not all, have been affected by the COVID-19, so this will not be an issue. However, our DBP lending officers will still have to validate if the project or the business as a matter of procedure are really affected, because not all of our borrowers are availing naman of our deferment period, deferment facility. Some are continuing to pay interest. So on the other hand, and then existing borrowers must be in good standing at the time the calamity occurred. So on the other hand, for new borrowers, the new borrowers must be in operation for at least 1 year prior to the calamity and have no adverse findings on past and current dealings with the bank and major suppliers. No adverse findings meaning no canceled cards, no canceled credit cards, no past due with other banks, no closed current accounts, no court cases against you for sum of money. Your suppliers will not tell us that you have passed due with them before the calamity. This is very important because this is about your character, which will be an indication of your willingness to pay. Let me emphasize that DBP has always been ready to go all out in its strategic support to MSMEs, crisis or no crisis. But we have to contend with one challenging truth. The funds available to DBP to implement its programs of assistance are not inexhaustible or not unlimited. So with this awareness, we welcome new government initiatives directed at further assisting in economic recovery efforts. Following the government's lead, our support to MSMEs under the DBP Response Program have been refocused to give more attention to certain industries. So under this program, we have priority industries. Number one would be and then we also have health, food value chain such as agriculture, food manufacturing, logistics, and food trade. So again, this kind of businesses will be our priority, although we would also cater to other industries on a case-to-case basis. These are the initial documents you have to submit through our email if you wish to apply under our DBP response program. So I need not mention them. They are on the screen, and anyway, the Cebu Chamber and PWC will be sharing to you this material. So DBP lending offices are strategically located in key cities nationwide to make the much-needed MSME financing accessible. Information on our development lending programs are also available through our DBP website at www.dbp.ph. For Central Visayas, we have 3 lending centers. One in Bohol, which is a Tagbilaran Lending Center located at CPG North Avenue, Tagbilaran City, Bohol. And there are 2 lending centers in Cebu, Cebu South Lending Center and Cebu North Lending Center, both located at the mezzanine floor, DBP Building, Osmeña Boulevard, Cebu City. I would like to end with this quote from the great Charles Darwin. It is not the strongest of the species that survives, nor the most intelligent that survives. It is the one that is most adaptable to change. Thank you and good morning.
Thank you very much, Attorney Marisa. Thank you also, Sir Boy and Sir Celso, for the very informative presentation on the different lending programs for MSMEs. PwC has integrated these programs into a single navigator or tool, which will help you find the available financing options for your business. So this tool is free, and you can access this via our website. We will share the link with you in our post-webinar email. The Navigator is designed to recommend financing programs that would fit your requirements. There is a series of questions crafted to profile your business and financing needs. And at the end of the questionnaire, you will get a report with a recommendation on the financing choices available specific to your business needs, together with details of the programs and the requirements. We hope that this tool will help you find the right financing program for your business. We will now move on to our Q&A session. Alvin De Fusing, PwC Philippines Consulting Director, will be our moderator. Take it away, Alvin.
All right, thank you, Jaja, and thank you to our speakers and panelists for the very comprehensive sharing. I'm pretty sure all our participants via the Zoom webinar and as well as Facebook, especially the MSMEs, are taking down notes and keeping a tab on the program applicable to them. For those who have just joined us, we have heard our speakers talk about the following programs. So Mr. Celso Gutierrez from Phil Guarantee gave a good overview of Phil Guarantee's mandates, initiatives, and the credit guarantee program for MSMEs. And then we had Mr. Boy Lagapa Jr. from Land Bank sharing about the SME credit facility, the specialized lending facilities for MSME. So I'll just enumerate them quickly. For poultry, contractors, farm tourism, franchising, Go Green inclusive financing, renewable energy and OFW, and the iRescue lending program. So some things that I was able to note. So some banks don't need the one-is-to-one collateral cover, and there are credit enhancers that can be used, such as the PDCs, assignment of accounts receivable, and surety. And one thing I also noted is land bank can also extend to startups on a case-to-case basis. And then we had Attorney Marisa Anino from DBP sharing about the DBP response or rehabilitation support program on severe events. And some few things that I was able to get. There are lower interest rates than the standard program, and processing fees and other charges are waived. And then there's also the deferment facility for existing borrowers up to 2021, which is longer than the what has been shared by the BSP. And there are priority industries such as infrastructure, health, and the food value chain. So those in agriculture, food manufacturing, logistics, and trade. Then, of course, we have Jaja from PwC Philippines sharing the backdrop together with the Aldi in terms of the MSME challenges, practical tips, and more recently, the PwC MSME Financing Navigator. So a reminder to all our panelists, kindly ensure that your cameras are on so that our participants can see you as we have the Q&A session. And also, please be conscious when you mute or unmute your microphone during the discussion. To our participants now, please ensure that your microphones are on mute so that we can all hear our panelists clearly as they answer your questions. So at this point, our Q&A portion, we will discuss the questions that you have sent us during the webinar registration, as well as those posted in Zoom chat panel and the Facebook comment box. So let me check first our questions. So some of the questions that you have sent us in advance. The first one, so are there any this is open to to all our speakers. Are there any 0% financing programs available to industries that are heavily affected by the pandemic?
For land bank, unfortunately, as of now, we still don't have that 0% interest. We'll be waiting for top management maybe to have an information right after the SONA of the president.
All right.
For DBP, we do not also have that kind of zero interest program. But I have read the draft of the Bayanihan to Heal as one act, second two, no? Bayanihan to Heal Act 2, that they would be providing zero interest rate loans, but only for the agriculture sector. So that I hope that would be pursued by Congress or approved soon. Thank you.
All right. So as of now, there's no 0%, but as our speakers have shared, though, so these are special programs in light of the pandemic that we can avail. There's a specific question for online businesses. So what are our options if the venture is an online business? Will there be any difference in the financing offers because of the pandemic?
Oh.
For online businesses, of course, the financing would be on the capital requirement of the business. So be it online or not in the online model, but if they need working capital to operate their business, then land bank can also support their working capital needs.
All right.
So for DBP, whether online or not online, working capital will still be a listing of all your expenses in order to operate your business. But what's the difference of the financing because of the pandemic? Just like I've mentioned earlier, if we put the financing under the response program, interest rate will be lower compared to the regular. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right.
For field guarantee, can I For
Yes.
field guarantee, as long as the bank we are guaranteeing is comfortable with the credit, we're willing to support it.
All right. So for those on with online businesses, so at least you have we have options, and it's possible for us to get financing, especially at this time. We've noticed that the different programs would have requirements in terms of collaterals. So for any of our panelists, if there will be cases wherein the MSME or the borrower doesn't have what do you call this? What are the available options if they do not have like a qualified collateral um, when getting a loan? Are there still available facilities for them, or what are the recourse that they can do if they don't have enough or they don't have collateral at all?
For DBP, actually, we're basically cash flow based now. So if if we look at the cash flow of your business and then it's good, so we're not really very strict on collateral. Although collateral can really increase your chances of approval or increase the loan amount that we can provide you.
All right.
Okay.
Land bank requires that the object of financing should be offered as collateral. So if there's no REM and then say they are purchasing equipment or putting up facilities, so they can offer it as under chattel mortgage. And I mentioned in the presentation, we can also accept the credit enhancers, assignment of receivables, and post-dated checks.
Yep.
For field guarantee, because you have several choices of banks and different financing criteria, there are some accredited banks that are willing to forgo collateral. The only thing they would probably ask is a JSS of the borrower. But it's basically if there's really no collateral, again, they do have methodologies in using cash flow based lending. So we're really very open also to that. The intent actually of our COVID response is actually to allow unsecured loans to be guaranteed.
All right. So it's good to hear that for those who have challenges in terms of their collateral. So it's not the end. There are various options that we can explore, and of course there are credit enhancers that we can deploy, and of course other facilities that would allow unsecured loans. But of course, there should be a strong cash flow and other parameters or variables that we can provide the financing institution for our loan application. Particularly interested in terms of the turnaround time for the facility to be approved. So from the time the borrower submits the documents, assuming that it's complete, up to the time to approve and the notification that it has been granted.
For land bank, we would like to emphasize that the reckoning will be on the submission of complete documents. So we
Yes,
have
yes.
30 to 45 days turnaround time depending on the amount of loan and the loan approving authority. But again, the reckoning is based on the submission of complete documents.
For DBP, just like Land Bank, the the shortest would be 45 working days. That's the best time, turnaround time.
Mm-hmm. All
For
right.
field guarantee, there are actually two aspects of our processes. First is accrediting the banks. We're open actually to accrediting the banks. This is the first time we're dealing actually with rural banks. Our commitment on that is 30 working days. But as to providing the guarantee to the banks that are already accredited, our committed turnaround time is 5 days.
All right. I think that also emphasizes the fact that for our MSMEs and those availing of the credit facility, we need to ensure that we have the complete documentation so that at least from the time that we submit, we wouldn't have any challenges in terms of the processing. And it will also streamline the processing time for our financial institutions. And on that note, just a follow-up question. What are the typical observations or challenges that you see from your borrowers, especially the MSMEs, when they submit or apply for credit facility or loans? What would be the typical challenges and issues that you notice so that our MSMEs listening will take note and make sure that they don't fall into the same challenge?
Actually, most of the challenges that we're facing with MSMEs is their financial statements, no? So
Mhm.
just like what Land Bank was saying, we have measures for capacity to pay, like current ratio, debt service ratio. Uh, for capital, we have our debt to equity ratio. So the financial statements really are not showing that. So we would have difficulty really in recommending and approvals for most MSMEs.
For land bank, yes, we have challenges in the submitted financial statements of the applicants. Sometimes it does not reflect their their actual or the actual operation. That's why we need still to validate. And also for the collaterals, if they're offering real estate as collateral, sometimes the supporting documents are not complete when they submit. Usually the sketch plan, location plan, the tax declaration, and then the payment of taxes. So that's the usual documents that would delay the conduct of appraisal.
And also, Alvin, if I may add,
Yes, sure.
another struggle really are the adverse findings that we discover from the other banks, from credit card companies, because once it's about character, banks are really off with those kinds of findings.
Mhm. And I think for our entrepreneurs, I think that's also one thing that we need to remember that the our personal credit history, especially, will have some impact on our businesses. So it's also a at least a reminder for us that these are things that we should be careful about, especially if we're venturing into businesses, and it will translate to our companies as well. I think we'll proceed with the specific questions. Just one more on the pre-registration questions. For Phil Guarantee, I know you have this, but do you have you already have the list of accredited banks for the credit guarantee program, and where can we find it?
Uh, we have actually accredited several commercial banks, except by next week we'll be able to sign already the agreements. We're now on the final stages. By next week we'll have a list, but we're looking at about 10 commercial banks and about 50 rural banks and about 10 or 9 thrift banks. That's what we have looked at, which is the available channels for the credit. So in terms of nationwide reach, I guess that will be sufficient to reach most of our target clientele of MSMEs.
All right. And can we refer to your website probably next week once the information or the agreements have been
Yeah.
signed?
Yes, yes. Well, I'm preempting myself. We're looking after August 5. We're
All
looking
right.
after August 5. We'll have the list already of the initial banks.
All right. Thank you for that.
Several big banks.
Yes, we'll just wait for August 5 and have that list available for us also for our participants. Some of the questions that came through the chat box. Um, First one would be for Phil Guarantee. We have a lot of questions for Phil Guarantee. So is the
Mhm.
Phil Guarantee available for the hotel industry?
again, because we do not grant the guarantee direct to any particular enterprise, we work with the banks. As long as the bank accepts the risk and of course they're comfortable with the credit, we are actually allowing, we are guaranteeing that. That's part of tourism.
Mhm.
We're trying to work also with DOT on this one, and several multilaterals actually were in discussions to be able to grant far more than what our capital right now can allow. So yes, we're helping almost everyone.
All right. So I think this is so just to recap that. So it will really depend on the I should say the partner bank or the accredited bank of Phil Guarantee, whether they will lend to companies in the hotel industry, and then of course Phil Guarantee is willing to provide that backing for that loan. And I think on that related note, Mr. Sel, so there's a question, but just to answer this. So do you have a do you guarantee personal loans of tour guides related to the tourism industry, but specifically personal loans for tour guides?
Uh, uh, there's some peculiarity about the personal loans kasi there are
Yep.
two classifications. It's either for productive or consumption. We always, if the partner banks, and we have already informed them about this, uh, the partner banks will actually take a look at the productive side. Is it, if it is for the business? If it were for consumption, the personal loans, I don't think it will qualify. That's not part of our charter.
All right. Okay. And then last question for Phil Guarantee as of now. So what are your criteria or basis of the SME credit rating? So do you use the Credit Information Corporation credit reports?
Yes, we also do that, but we rely basically on the credit information provided by the banks. Most of, to shorten turnaround times, we actually had majority of the requirements we have are actually representation and warranties of the banks. But we have to check also the particular name, because there are what we call common names. The borrower may have several credit facilities with several accredited banks. So that's where we limit actually the guarantee,
All
the
right.
common name. So we limit that guarantee. We do not exceed the 3:1 debt equity ratio on that one. We will limit the guarantee only to the debt equity ratio level of 3:1. If it's going to exceed that, then the guarantee will not be extended anymore. We are willing to accept several credits because of common names, but on a first come first serve basis. But we will not exceed the 3:1 debt equity as
Mhm.
far as the guarantee is concerned.
All right. At least thank you for clarifying that item, and hopefully our participant was able to get also that clarification. And going back to the lending criteria and for the application. So I've seen in the presentations that you have also presented the main criteria for assessing the loan applications. But the common question that we get is, do you have a negative list for our for DBP and Land Bank?
As I've mentioned, basically our negative list are those illegal businesses.
Mhm.
For land bank, we would ensure that the project we are financing is not inconsistent with the moral and legal aspect. So as long as it is a productive venture, um, we don't have, or we can finance those projects. But now we have for now with this pandemic, there are those that are severely affected by this pandemic. So it would be close evaluation if that project will still produce the cash flow that is desired.
All right. All right.
Alvin,
Yes, po.
Philgarity also has a negative list.
Mhm.
We're not supporting mining at the moment, any form of mining, because they're still being fixed in Congress. Anything related to gambling or purchase of gambling equipment, of course, casinos not allowed. So those are our negative list actually.
Mhm.
So again, anything illegal is not
Mhm.
uh,
And it's,
guaranteed.
and I think that's also consistent with, aside from the nature of the business. Of course, when we hear of these items, this come up particularly in terms of AML risks that are being evaluated by the different institutions granting the credit. Um, there is one specific question, particularly in terms of startup companies. Although you mentioned earlier that you do it on a case-to-case basis. So, are the financing programs available for startup companies, or do you have separate programs for startups? And what would be the documents that can be submitted, or the documentary requirements, given that these startup companies have a limited or no track record?
For I mentioned the presentation for startup, it would be on a case-to-case basis. But one requirement is that the proponent should have a familiarity on the business that they are going to undertake, and also we need to have more or less a project study or a feasibility study of the business or the project that they're going to undertake, so that we can evaluate the prospects. And then there should be a tie-up also on the potential market and the other concerns related to the business that they're going to venture.
How about for DBP Attorney Marisa?
For DBP, we also do financing for startup businesses. Just like Land Bank, we ask for their projected, for a project study and their projected cash flows financial statement. Although we're really looking at it, scrutinizing, because these are startups. So um, pr- priority there would be industries, sunrise industries, no, industries with very good potential at the moment for startup businesses.
All right. So how I understand it, Attorney Marisa and Mr. Boyd, or Celso, that for this for startup companies, we can still avail of the financing using the existing programs. But of course, there will be these criteria and considerations given that they're startup companies.
Yes, we would want to emphasize we're not shying away from startup as
Mm-hmm.
long as we see potential and good management. No? The people that
Mm-hmm.
are managing it have a good reputation and really have the technical expertise to manage the business.
Mm-hmm. All right. There's another question. So, what is the surety or guarantee loan program of these institutions for LGUs, if there is any? So, do we have something for the LGUs?
Yes, because we're government banks,
Yep,
we're
yep.
catering actually to LGUs, and the collateral there being their internal revenue allotment.
Mm, all right.
For land bank, as of now, for the LGU loans, we are banking under IRA, or the internal revenue allotment, as collateral of the loan.
Mm-hmm. All
And
right.
if I may add, Alvin, because
Mm-hmm.
there are these are LGUs, we can finance 100% of their requirement. Pwede no equity for local government units.
All right. The next question that came through the chat box, so specific to Land Bank, so they are interested in terms of the franchising lending program. So how does the franchising lending program work? You can further elaborate on that.
Yes. For the franchise business model, di ba, we have to pay franchise fee, or we have to put
Yes.
up a fund. So Land Bank could grant a loan to put up the franchise fee or the bond. And if there are other requirements still in the implementation of the business, we can still also evaluate and have it financed.
Alvin, if I may add,
Yes,
although I did
sir.
not mention it in my presentation, but we also cater to franchising. We also have a franchise loan. So just like Land Bank, we finance the franchise fee and the leasehold improvements if ever, or additional need in order for the franchise to work.
All right, and I think both Land Bank and the DBP can answer this. So we have seen that the farming is also one of the priority sectors for lending. So is urban farming considered as part of the farming that we're talking about? Especially I think ito yung mga not necessarily on the rural or countryside area farming activities.
Yes. Urban farming is still considered as a farming activity. So if there are those that are undertaking urban farming and is requiring working capital for their project, we can take a look and evaluate. And then we just have to evaluate the feasibility of the project, say the scale, the volume, and how it operates. So if it works and has potential on cash flow, so Land Bank can finance on that.
All right. Attorney Marisa, do you have a similar program covering urban farming?
Can we ask what's the specific of the urban farming that they are contemplating or they're doing?
Maybe our participant who has sent over the question, if you can add more details so we can provide our speakers more context so they can share and add more information on that item. Just going through the list of questions that are still coming in. So there is one question about asking the financial institutions, what are the bayanihan strategies that you have? So I think this is based on their experience for other banks. So banks are offering two options on how to pay existing loans. So one would be to extend 3 months on the original loan term period of the borrower in order to move to March, April, or May payment due dates. I think this is during the early stages of the quarantine period and Bayanihan Act as one. So, but an interest will be added based on the total remaining balance of the borrower. So there's only an extension of the term loan, but there's still interest on that extension. And then the second option, so if you do not wish to be charged with the additional interest, you need to pay the full amount due for 3 months, so for March, April, and May. So I think the context here is what was the strategy for Land Bank and DBP related to this. Although I think there were some mention on this regarding the extended or deferred payment, but can you elaborate more, Mr. Boy and Attorney Marisa?
For DBP, what we did during because the bayanihan ended June, the deferment, the automatic grace period ended June 1, because and then so practically from March 8, April, May, June, we deferred interest payment, and there we did not charge any penalty. No, so as of effect come June 1, those interests will already fall due, but we further deferred them under our DBP response. So during the period of the bayanihan, there were no penalties for unpaid interest.
For land bank, for our existing borrowers, for the period March, April, and May, we gave a moratorium on the payment. It can be both principal and interest. And in compliance with the law, there should be no interest on the unpaid interest. So it's only on the principal portion that there's a computation for the interest. And also in compliance also with the BIR regulation, up to May 31, for those that promissory notes that were extended and or restructured during that period, there is an exemption for the payment of documentary stamp tax. And then after May, so June onwards, Land Bank has also approved for moratorium of payments for those businesses that were really affected up to the first quarter of 2021. It would be evaluated if it would warrant a moratorium on payment of amortizations.
All right. Regarding the question on urban farming, so as I assume, but it's clear, at least better clear now. So when we talk of urban farming, it's planting vegetables or fruits in their own home or backyard in the urban area like city. So more of yun, urban sa urban place. Either siguro the traditional soil-based or hydroponics, if you'd like to call it. So kung ganong context po ba kasama pa rin sa farming category?
For land bank, of course, we would take a look on the scale or the volume, because if it's really on the backyard, so there's not much of the requirement, no. But if they have established a market and they would intend to produce considerable volume, and it would entail also a requirement on a capital to produce such volume, then it can qualify for our financing program.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, for DBP, we'll also look into the need really, because if again, just like what Sir Boy said, if it's just a backyard farming and all, so I think the need would not really be that much.
All right. Thank you. And down to our last question, in the interest of time also, and just in time for this one. So, I think the main challenge also for MSMEs, of course, we have the different financing institutions offering credit, but still there's a challenge in terms of getting credit or access to credit. So in other countries, as we have noted, so both government and private sector are working towards providing the stimulus package and loans to SMEs. So similar to our case also. But in other territories, there's one way to facilitate this by having a central lending platform that MSMEs can access and use to apply for loans, and including uploading of the supporting documents. And participating institutions and banks can just log into this platform also and view the applications and leverage to review and approve these loan requests. So what do you think, to our speakers, what do you think of this concept if it will be applied to the Philippine market? Do you think it is something that will be useful, and open financial institutions will be open to adopt?
Yes, especially in situations now that we are limiting face-to-face contact, no, with the applicants or with the proponents. So we can do online platform. So they can apply and submit documents via online. In fact, we are doing it now for our existing clients. Documents that we are requiring or informations that we are needing, they can send it through email or some other media platforms. And also in loan evaluation, we can have it, and the feedbacking can be done also online.
All right. How about
For DBP, we would welcome that platform. It's a good sourcing platform for MSMEs or other borrowers. That would be good and would be able to help the banks and the economy as well.
Mhm. How about for field guarantees? Is something that will
Yeah.
be useful also?
For field guarantee, we have been approached by several of these platforms. We are studying them now, but because of the pandemic, we're focusing really on the banks to be able to spread the credit. But we are studying about two or three of them. It looks promising. We're just going to simulate some of the processes and dimensioning the funding requirements of these platforms. Our issue there is probably it would have to be something similar. It is just a platform, but with like partner banks or part of the funders and on the other side the borrowers. So we're studying it. It looks very interesting, but there are still some issues we're trying to resolve with these providers also.
All right.
Thank you. Uh,
All right.
is my audio clear or it's choppy?
Yes, Mr. Celso, we can hear you clearly.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. All right. And then thank you so much. So we're nearing the end of our webinar. And again, thank you to our panelists and the institutions that they represent. Uh, so Mr. Gutierrez of Phil Guarantee, Mr. Lagap of Land Bank, and Attorney Anino of DBP. For all our participants, please watch out for the post-webinar email from PwC. So containing the link to our PwC MSME Financing Navigator and the feedback form. I would love to hear your thoughts and suggestions regarding our webinar. And once you complete the feedback form, you will receive a link for today's presentation materials. And of course, if you'd like to get in touch with Fail Guarantee, DBP, and the Land Bank, they have shared the contact details and even their offices that are that you can go to or approach or contact for your lending requirements. And lastly, as we recognize the importance of MSMEs, not only on the Philippines, but also the regional economy. So our regional consulting teams have been working with regulators, governments, financial institutions, and MSMEs to bridge the gap between MSMEs needing funds to sustain the business and the government and FIs providing these funds, especially those government provided and backed loans. So please watch out for more of our announcements from PwC from us, as we will share more information on this MSME platform in the coming weeks. So discover, initiate, interact, and connect with our MSME digital platform. And with that, to summarize and wrap up today's session, let's welcome PwC Philippines Managing Partner for Deals and Corporate Finance, Ms. Mary Jade Rojas Divina Gracia. Jade?
Yeah, hi. Can you hear me okay, Alvin?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, thank you so much, Alvin. And thank you to our speakers for clearly presenting the various loan facilities available to the MSMEs, and of course, for answering all the questions asked this morning. That was a very interesting exchange, no? And of course, thank you also to the Cebu Chamber of Commerce and Industry for organizing and hosting this event and for partnering with PwC. The objective of this webinar was to inform the MSMEs of the different financing options that they can consider during this time. We have heard from the speakers emphasize the importance of MSMEs in the economic development of the country, yet they remain to be one of the most vulnerable sectors during this crisis. While they account for over 99% of the total number of establishments in the country, the banking industry's total exposure to the MSMEs remain below 10% based on the data of the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas. MSMEs always have had the difficulty accessing financing because of three reasons. No? First, limited formal credit history. Formal because MSMEs usually access informal non-bank channels but have limited exposure to formal financial institutions. Second, insufficient collateral, but happy to note that our speakers' responses concerning the alternative collaterals or credit enhancers that can be used. And third, inadequate financial records to support MSME's ability to repay the loan. At this time of crisis, access to financing is critical for survival, particularly for micro and small enterprises. So it's good to hear from our speakers what the government financial institutions are doing to help MSMEs during this time. Listening to the presentations, I have 3 key takeaways. 1, practice good governance. Compared to informal channels, banks offer attractive financing, longer credit terms, and lower interest rates, but you can only access them if your business is registered and you have adequate financial records to show. 2, enhance your credit worthiness. Lending institutions check your credit history, so pay your bills on time. I believe our speakers have emphasized about the importance of character in assessing credit risk. The business owner's credit worthiness is just as important. So please watch those credit card and even utility bills. And third key takeaway today, liquidity is important and much more critical during times of crisis. So conserve your cash, revisit your expenses, and know your credit options. You may also visit the PwC website to test our MSME Financing Navigator to check which financing option will be appropriate for your needs. The MSME Credit Guarantee Program of Phil Guarantee, the iRescue of the Land Bank, and the Response Facility of the DBP are designed specifically to help MSMEs face the financial challenges of this pandemic. We'd like to, of course, thank our audience for spending your morning with us and for your active participation during the Q&A. I hope that today's session has provided you a glimpse of what support you can get from our government financial institutions. So again, thank you very much, everyone, and have a wonderful day. Thank you, Alvin.
Thank you, Jade, and thank you, everyone. That ends our webinar. Have a good day and stay safe.
Stay safe, everyone.